We often picture history's worst monsters as if they just arrived fully formed, stepping out of the shadows with an army already at their back. But the reality is actually far more terrifying than that. The truth is, dictators are made. Today, we're diving straight into a really harrowing explainer on how a fractured democracy falls to a dictator. We're going to see firsthand how extreme propaganda, when combined with unchecked power, can absolutely weaponize a nation's collective grief. It's arguably the central mystery of the 20th century, right? How did an absolute nobody, a destitute, rejected artist with zero money, no connections, and completely devoid of power, manage to orchestrate a masterclass in psychological manipulation and drag the entire world into its deadliest war? To really find the origin of this monster, we have to look past the military uniforms and the roaring crowds. We have to dive into a deep, twisted journey of psychological obsession. Because this story doesn't start in some dark war room. It actually starts in Vienna, back in 1907. A young Adolf Hitler was dreaming of grand architecture and cultural reverence. But when he applied to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, he was rejected. And not just once, but twice. For a young man with a fiercely fragile ego, this was a catastrophic psychological blow. He found himself utterly destitute, living in homeless shelters, literally shoveling snow just to buy a piece of bread. And as he wandered those freezing streets, his mind just twisted. He desperately searched for a scapegoat for his profound humiliation, and he soaked up the virulent anti-Semitism and radical nationalism that was bubbling in Vienna's underbelly. Then, 1914 hits, and World War I erupts. Now, for millions of people, this was a terrifying meat grinder, but for this aimless drifter, it was salvation. He immediately enlisted, finally finding the strict structure and purpose he craved. But the real turning point arrived in 1918. A British mustard gas attack left him temporarily blinded, and it was while recovering in a military hospital, literally gasping for air in the mud, that he got the news that shattered his reality. Germany had surrendered. To him, it was an impossible betrayal. He convinced himself the army hadn't actually lost, but had been stabbed in the back by politicians and minorities at home. He left that hospital completely consumed by one singular, terrifying obsession: vengeance. Fast forward to Germany in the early 1920s. The nation is on its knees. The Treaty of Versailles, hyperinflation, starvation, it was the absolute perfect breeding ground for radicalism. Hitler joins this tiny, obscure political group and quickly realizes he possesses one highly lethal talent: his voice. In the rowdy, smoke-filled beer halls of Munich, he didn't just give your standard political speeches. He performed calculated psychological warfare. He'd start really quietly, sensing the room's tense mood, before building up to a screaming theatrical climax. He told desperate crowds exactly what they wanted to hear. He gave them a target, and he promised them a violent return to glory. So by 1923, he thinks he's powerful enough to just seize control by force in the disastrous beer hall putsch. It was a catastrophic failure. Police opened fire, he was arrested for high treason, and honestly, it really should have been the embarrassing end of his story. But instead, he masterfully transforms his trial into a spectacular national stage, broadcasting his extremism to the entire country. The sympathetic judges hand him a shockingly light sentence. And while he's sitting in a comfortable prison cell, he dictates his unhinged, violent blueprint for global conquest, Mein Kampf. He told the world exactly what he planned to do. Tragically, very few actually took it seriously. When he gets out, he completely changes tactics. To destroy democracy, he realizes he has to use its own rules. Then, the Great Depression hits in 1929. Millions lose their jobs overnight, and sheer panic returns to the streets. The Nazi Party capitalizes on this terror like wildfire. And here is where the sheer arrogance of the German elite proved completely fatal. Through a web of backdoor deals and political blackmail, they seriously believed they could control this radical figurehead. So on January 30, 1933, they appointed Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. They literally handed over the keys to a nation he fully intended to burn to the ground. Do you think this single fatal decision by the elites changed history forever? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, because what happens next is a terrifying realization. You see, even as Chancellor, he wasn't a dictator yet. The laws still restricted him. To achieve absolute, unquestioned dominance, he didn't just need political office. He needed a crisis. The really crucial point here is how ruthlessly fast he moved when that crisis finally arrived. Just 4 weeks after taking power, the German parliament building, the Reichstag, mysteriously burns to the ground. He instantly claims it's a communist revolution, forcing an emergency decree. In a single stroke of a pen, civil liberties, free speech, and the right to a fair trial just vanished. Poof. He unleashed the Gestapo to drag political opponents away in the dead of night. And finally, total propaganda. Independent thought was systematically erased, entirely replaced by a fanatical cult of personality. But the physical terror on the streets was only one part of the equation. During the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, he actually assassinated hundreds of his own allies and political rivals. He proved literally no one was untouchable. And when President Hindenburg died shortly after, Hitler did something entirely unprecedented. He forced the entire German military to swear an unconditional oath of loyalty, not to the country, not to the Constitution, but to him personally. He now had absolute, unchecked power. So, the stage is set for a global catastrophe. On September 1, 1939, that fragile illusion of peace completely shatters as German forces smash into Poland with terrifying, erratic speed. It was overwhelming psychological shock. Swarms of dive bombers and tanks made the German war machine appear completely unstoppable. By the spring of 1940, he sweeps through Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, and Belgium. And then the unthinkable happens. France collapses in just 6 weeks. He parades through Paris like the undisputed conqueror of Europe. But look closer. These rapid military conquests were never just about territory. They were a smokescreen. As the borders expanded, millions of innocent people fell under the suffocating shadow of his regime. His deeply ingrained, obsessive hatred, the one born on those freezing streets of Vienna, was now about to be unleashed on an industrial scale. 6 million. Just let this suffocating weight of that number hang in the air for a moment. This was the Holocaust, the systematic, bureaucratic genocide of 6 million Jewish people, alongside Romani people, people with disabilities, and countless others. They were completely stripped of their humanity, forced into starving ghettos, and packed into windowless cattle cars destined for extermination camps like Auschwitz. Millions were murdered in gas chambers in a genocide executed with terrifying, cold efficiency. This open, bleeding wound on the conscience of humanity stands as the ultimate, horrifying consequence of what happens when a society completely abandons empathy and hands absolute power to a regime fueled purely by hatred. It's a really heavy reality to confront, I know. But hey, if you value these deep cinematic dives into history that refuse to look away from the hard truth, take a quick second to like this explainer and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep bringing you these critical historical autopsies. Because the darkness of this story, it was about to consume its own creator. All right, so by 1941, Hitler's ambition is just this bottomless, ravenous void. In the summer of that year, he makes the absolute most catastrophic gamble of his life. Driven by sheer ego, he breaks his non-aggression pact with Stalin and launches Operation Barbarossa. 3 million German soldiers pour across the border directly into the vast expanse of the Soviet Union. At first, yeah, the advance was devastating. But the invincible war machine soon ran headfirst into the brutal reality of the merciless Russian winter. As temperatures plummeted to 40 below zero, tanks literally froze solid. The psychological and military tide of the entire war permanently shifted in the blood-soaked rubble of Stalingrad. Consumed by total delusion, Hitler refused to allow his freezing, starving army to retreat. The result was total annihilation. That myth of invincibility, broken forever. From that moment on, the hunters become the hunted, and the pace of the collapse is just relentless. In June 1944, the Allies launched D-Day, cracking Fortress Europe wide open from the west, while the vengeful Soviet juggernaut rolled in like a bloody tide from the east. The skies over Germany darkened with bombers, turning proud cities completely to ash. The 1,000-year empire he promised was collapsing in flames in less than 12 years. Which brings us to the claustrophobic finale in April 1945. Berlin is this apocalyptic wasteland, violently shaking under the deafening roar of Soviet artillery. And deep beneath those burning ruins, inside a reinforced concrete bunker, a fractured, graying dictator was completely losing his grip on reality. He was screaming at his generals in cramped rooms, commanding imaginary armies on heavy wooden maps, entirely refusing to accept his undeniable defeat as Soviet tanks rolled just blocks away. Realizing that capture meant a humiliating public trial, he made his final, cowardly decision to escape justice. On April 30, 1945, as vicious street fighting echoed directly above them, A single gunshot echoed through the heavy concrete halls. The most feared dictator of the 20th century died by his own hand in a cold subterranean room. His loyal aides hastily carried his lifeless body up the stairs and burned it in the courtyard, erasing his physical remains just as his empire turned to ash all around him. But man, the devastation he left behind is almost incomprehensible. World War II claimed the lives of an estimated 70 to 85 million people. Entire cities were leveled. Global economies were absolutely obliterated. A traumatized world was left to reckon with the horrifying revelations of the Holocaust as a divided Europe plunged almost immediately into the freezing nuclear paranoia of the Cold War. His legacy was one of absolute unmitigated ruin. The urgent warning of this explainer is incredibly clear. The Nazi regime was not some freak historical accident. It was built by ordinary people who chose to look away, trading their moral compass for a false sense of security. History's monsters, they don't arrive wearing horns. They arrive wrapped in flags and false promises, actively feeding on the grievances of the forgotten. Defending critical thinking and democracy isn't just about politics. It is a critical moral imperative. The fragility of democracy is a permanent reality for all of us. So based on everything we've uncovered today, what do you think is the single most important lesson the world must never forget? Take a moment to reflect on that and share your answer down in the comments. We really need to keep this conversation alive. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.